It's Lucy Litch, and this is Tiny House Conversations. It's the Australian-based podcast where I interview experienced tiny houses, tiny builders, and adventurers in the tiny world so you can discover how to create, build, and transition into tiny life. So you want to go tiny, but you might be wondering, where can I park my tiny house? I want to let you know that I have a special unreleased podcast episode of tiny house parking success stories from other tiny houses who were just like you and who have easily managed to find a long-term parking space for their tiny home. Some of them have even found more than one space. So if you want ideas on finding a parking space for your tiny, you can download this episode for free. To get access to it, head over to tinyhouseconversations.com/tiny parking. If you enter your details there, I'll send it straight to your inbox. Now let's intro today's episode. Hey, it's Lucy and welcome back to Tiny House Conversations. Joining me on the show today are Sarah and Scott Rohdich, who are tiny houses living off-grid and are also the co-owners of the tiny building company Häuslein Tiny House Co. They're based in Port Macquarie, New South Wales, and they build such amazing tiny houses. I actually got to see one of their homes recently at the Sydney Tiny Homes Expo, and I really love the style of their tiny homes. And just so you know, a Häuslein is a German word for a small dwelling with a big heart. It's warm, the lights are on, and you're welcome here. And they named the company Häuslein Tiny House Co because of the German heritage of two of their co-founders, as well as their appreciation for German quality engineering, which they seek to reflect in their tiny house builds. And they believe life is for living and enjoying. It's about relationships and building a lifestyle that has time for the little things. Growing gardens, delicious, wholesome meals cooked at home, laughter around the table, and tinkering on what you love together. I love the sound of that. And in this conversation, we talk about Sarah and Scott's family's experiences of living tiny, what kind of family-friendly features they included in their home, Häuslein's tiny house models and the kinds of high-quality building materials that they use, some options to connect with power, water, sewage, and off-grid solutions with their homes. We also talked about the process to work with Häuslein as a customer and so much more. Now, on to this tiny house conversation with Sarah and Scott. Sarah and Scott, thank you so much for joining me on Tiny House Conversations. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Lucy. We're honoured to be here.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, honoured to have you. And so you both run a tiny house building company called Häuslein, based in Port Macquarie in New South Wales. And I know that you also moved into your own tiny home at the end of last year. So what I'd love to do today in the conversation is hear about your own tiny house story and experiences of living tiny. And then I'd love to dive into also what you guys do with Häuslein. So can you start by sharing with us just a bit about how you came across tiny houses in the first place, and then what were some of your main reasons for going tiny yourself?
So Scott has always had an innovative mind, and we were planning to move overseas at one point. Scott's obviously from Ireland, not from here. Yeah, we were planning to move overseas and wanted to have some sort of small dwelling that we could leave a few things and just come back to when we wanted to come back to Australia. And Scott converted a shipping container into a little cabin for us. And so that was our kind of first personal experience. And
then next minute, you're just at a crossroads in life that sort of makes you ask the question, should I have a go at doing this? We had a point in our life a few years ago where we, asked that question and essentially, we were like, yep, let's give it a crack.
Yeah, and it definitely seems to be like, just from so many people I've talked to and myself included, a lot of people come towards tiny house living, because they're asking themselves those bigger questions like what you're talking about, like what's most important and how much stuff do I actually need, and how do I want to spend my days, and all of that thing, and then connection with nature and other aspects of life. And so I really resonate with that. And I'm wondering, so you've got your tiny, as I mentioned, that you moved into at the end of last year. What kind of setup have you guys got there? So are you off the grid fully, and what are you doing with power sources and all of that?
Yeah, we are fully off the grid. In terms of our decision more recently to move into a tiny house, we just really wanted to simplify living and reduce the costs of living and lighten our footprint and all of those things, just to give us a bit more freedom to do the things that we're passionate about, spend more time with our kids and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, we are fully off grid. We've got a solar system which keeps us going pretty well. We're still figuring out the ins and outs of it and how it works in summer and winter and what we need to cover the power consumption that we have. And but yeah, it's going really well. And we have a water tank, which thankfully so far we've been fine just collecting the water from the roof space of the tiny house. And a composting toilet. And that's been working really well for us as well.
Oh, great. And what kind of composting toilet do you have? Are you using like a split system or a self-contained one?
It's it's by Greenloo, and it just has I don't know exactly the categories that they come in, but it's kind of all self-contained, and then you just swap out the pods at the bottom, so it's really simple to use and there's no smells. It's great. We really love it. It's such a great solution for us.
Yeah, awesome. Is it the one so you've got a tub underneath the floor?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds like a split system. I'm wondering if it's the GL90 possibly, but
that sounds familiar.
I think it is.
Yeah. Awesome. No, that's good. I always love to ask about that, because one of the most, I don't know, you guys might get this question a lot too, but I know one of the most commonly asked questions is people always want to know what brand, what type, what other people are doing with composting toilets. Does it smell? And, all those different types of things. So I just wanted to see what you guys did. And I guess if anyone's listening as well, and you're interested in knowing more about composting toilets, I've got 2 episodes, number 15 with Anthony from Waterwally, and then number 16 with Kathy and Matt McMillan from A Tiny Life After All. But I'll put all of that in the show notes. You guys also, you've got kids as well that live in a tiny home with you, yeah?
Yep, that's right.
So how many kids do you have?
We have 2 kids.
And what ages are they?
The younger one's 4 and the older one's 8.
Okay. And how are they finding living in a tiny home and this kind of transition into this way?
Well, they love it. They probably like it more than we do. It's just, to them, it's just like a giant cubby house, really.
Yeah, we got 2 boys and they just think it's great. They've got their bunk beds and we've got heaps of room in their room. Like we've got big the under the bed storage, massive drawers and desks for them, and so they got quite a lot of room for things there, and they're definitely not struggling for like having toys or books or all their normal stuff. We definitely downsized a bit, but we've still got some stuff in storage so we can cycle things through if we need to as well. But yeah, they absolutely love it, and they obviously spend a lot of time outdoors. We've got a big veranda and a fair bit of space around us and some good trees, and so they have lots of adventures outside with their trucks and cars and building little cubby houses as well. And but they love coming in and sitting by the fire, and we do most of the normal things that we've always done, only we probably spend a bit more time together now.
Sounds like such a lovely way for the kids to grow up, and be exposed to, I guess, like a different way of living, and being able to be outside more and spending more of that quality family time that you talked about as well. And I'm wondering, when you were building this home, what kind of family friendly features did you feel like you really wanted to include?
The boys needed to have a good space, like kind of what Sarah was talking about with storage and stuff. So it's pretty well. I'm pretty happy with how it's designed and how it works. Full-time living with all of us, you kind of hope that it's going to go well. The honest truth is that it's really good, and the bedroom is probably one of my favorite parts of the whole house, actually. because if the kids fit in there beautifully in their bunk beds and the whole storage.
One of the other things I would just add to that is that we've got 2 couches. We've got an upstairs living area where we've got a telly, and the kids can sometimes just chill out and watch something. And if we need to, they can have earphones and we don't even know they're there. And they've got their own little space where they can watch a couple of their favourite shows or a movie or something. And then we've still got a couch downstairs so we can sit by the fire while they're... So we still have space, even though, so we don't feel like we're constantly in each other's pockets and can't get away sort of thing. So even in terms of managing their noise and things like that, we've got the deck set up too with chairs and things. So sometimes we'll go sit outside and they'll be playing inside, or we feel like we're still getting enough space. And even if they need to do their homeschool or whatever independently, I can put one in the bedroom at their desk and the other one at the breakfast bar. And I don't know, there's enough living zones we're finding that we don't feel kind of always on top of each other or tripping over each other or anything like that.
I've heard many times when people are maybe considering going tiny and they've got kids. I know especially some of my friends as well talking about it. It's like, could I actually do that with kids? And, will we have enough space? And would it be, would it be too cramped or would it work? And just, so many different questions. So it's really cool to just speak to different people that are living it and that it's working out really well for them. And, you mentioned before, Sarah, about simplifying your life. And I'm just curious about how this transition was for you, like the downsizing and moving into a smaller space.
We probably got rid of, at least 50 to 70% of our belongings. And I realised as we were packing up that we were just in a normal 3-bedroom house before we moved into the tiny house, and there were a wardrobe in the spare room, and I didn't even know what was in it. It was just full of boxes and things, but I didn't even remember what it was. I hadn't unpacked it in the 3 years that we were there. And so you just kind of collect all this stuff that you don't really need. So it was quite a lightening experience to get rid of all of that and not have to worry about it anymore. I think when we first moved in, there was definitely a bit of an adjustment in terms of, you've always got your stuff in certain places and organised in certain ways. So we did have to adjust to how we've reorganised things. And there was a few weeks or probably 2 months or so before we started feeling properly settled, just because it was a bit different.
Yeah, truth be told, when you're transitioning from kind of normal living to tiny living, I'd say the hardest thing to start with, at least, is just that downsizing process. You have to be absolutely brutal when it comes to just chucking stuff, and it is really hard to do. But if you're brutal and you just get it done. When it's done, I think we felt lighter. You feel like it's something that's off your shoulders, a weight. And you certainly don't miss vast majority of the stuff, I was kind of actually thinking the other night, I came up with a bit of an analogy. When you think about it, it's obvious to see that a tiny house is a fully functioning house, but it's kind of like the difference between one of those old school PCs where you've got the computer and the big box, there's plenty of space for parts and whatever else. And you've got a laptop, if you take the laptop apart and you take the PC apart, the actual components, the actual brains of the computer and the parts, the hard drive and whatnot, they're actually not a big lot of difference between the laptop and the PC. So you're just condensing it down, but it's still fully functioning. And in some ways, you have advantages with the laptop that you wouldn't have with the PC. And it's kind of the same with the tiny house. You're condensing it down and you have obvious advantages to that, but at the same time, it's fully functioning, So the biggest thing is just downsizing some of your stuff. And once you do it, you get it done and you're in there, and we're the family of 4, and it's honestly great. And having the different, like Sarah was saying earlier, having the different spaces, we have we have a full cinema, an extra. Who has a whole cinema room in their tiny house, So I'm quite proud of that fact. I call it the West Wing, got that as well as another living room.
And I think in terms of functionality, one of the big things that has helped is that in the design, we've always allowed for full-size appliances, and that's something we found from our first little shipping container conversion that we had. It makes such a difference to functionality. If you feel like you're trying to work out of a bar fridge when you would normally have a normal fridge, that can be really hard. But we've got a dishwasher, we've got a full-size washing machine, dryer, and full-size fridge, and all of those things just make it feel really normal, not just changed. In a sense, we almost feel like we've upgraded, not downgraded, because everything that we've got now is sort of better quality. We've been able to invest in better quality things rather than just spreading ourselves thin. It seems to be working really well so far.
If I can just add to that, one of the things that in our other tiny house builds that I try and incorporate in every build is to have just a space where it's not taken up by anything, So I'll try to kind of have overlays for a certain space where it has multi-uses, like part of your living room would be a part of a hallway or an entrance to a bedroom and stuff. So if you apply that principle and you end up being able to potentially have a space where you can essentially, what I'm trying to get at is you can actually lie down in that space and do like a snow angel kind of configuration, to have that space where you can not feel cramped everywhere. Every square inch of the house is cramped. I think that really helps. That's one of the things that I've sort of discovered. And one of the other things that I learned early on when I built our first shipping container house was that the key to success, especially if there's a couple or a family, there's more than one person living in there, it works really well to just have some sort of separation, some sort of rooms, So, whether it be a bedroom or 2 bedrooms in our case with doors on them, So it sounds a bit rough, but you just sometimes need to, as a family, you need to be able to, one of you might want to go to bed early or have a snooze, a siesta. If you can go into a room, close the door and have a bit of separation there, it's just, it's a good, healthy thing that in the reality of day-to-day living, I think is quite vital actually, because if you don't have that and you try to do tiny living with a couple or a family, I think you're gonna really do yourself a disservice in the long term.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a really great point, Scott, because we all do need our own space, especially, and then when you kind of couple that with being in a smaller space in general now in a tiny home, I think it becomes even more important that you do have that time away, and then you're able to, recharge or unwind and all of that stuff, so that you can then come back and be your best self for, when you're around your partner or your family or whoever it is that you might be living with. And yeah, I think that's a really great tip. And I know, just speaking to different couples as well on the podcast, especially, that's something that comes up often, is like when you are in a tiny space, there almost is nowhere to hide, there's a lot less space that you're able to have. And so, being able to create something like that where you can get away for a little bit is, really good insight. So I'd love to move into a little bit about what you guys do with Häuslein, and would also love to know, like, what inspired you to want to specialize in tiny house building and create this tiny building company?
Fundamentally, I've been in the building industry since I left school at 16, and I became went into an apprenticeship as a architectural joiner. So I've been doing it for a while. One of the things that I've recognized in the trade, whether it be Ireland or Australia, especially during boom times, is that, I don't know why, but there seems to be more McMansions all over the shop, and there tends to be less kind of love or less soul in those houses, less love put into them. You're spreading your money out thinner because you're trying to get maximizing your space, and it's just all a bit rush, and you can barely afford it, and people are. It's hard to explain, but I've always kind of appreciated a more modest style of lifestyle, and that obviously applies to, a modest kind of house. I think that's kind of one big thing. The tiny house thing is obviously very modest in terms of size, but the big plus there is that you can have make your money go further in terms of luxury items and stuff, which sounds a bit materialistic, but the reality is it's something that we can really enjoy. And I think it's a bit unfortunate if you kind of have this goal or idea of the McMansion and 2 nice cars, giant house, all these sport activities with kids and whatever else, to the point of where you're just struggling so much to meet all those financial demands. And it just has as we all can recognize that it has a negative effect in your social spheres and your mental health and everything, and physical health, everything, I've always had the underlying motivation for kind of modest housing, as well as quality. So to have something that's quality, luxurious, modest in size, affordable, enjoyable, that sort of really motivated me to come up with the idea. And then from there, and obviously my beautiful wife here is on the same page, I think. And
for sure. And we have two great business partners as well.
That's right.
So we were at a bit of a crossroads ourselves. We were kind of at a point where we were staying in Australia after having expected to move overseas, and just looking at different options and how we could use Scott's skills and my skills, and then working together with two of Scott's best friends. And it all just seemed to come together. It just seemed to fit with where Australia is at and how we can contribute to providing affordable housing, as well as quality housing, and just things that we were passionate about ourselves as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you've kind of recognized, okay, like how can we use the skills that maybe Scott already has, and then combine it with what is important to you, and how you're wanting to contribute to more affordable housing and all this type of stuff. I think, that's beautiful. And I'm curious because I mentioned to you offline that I saw one of your tiny houses at the Sydney Tiny Homes Expo recently, and found it was probably my favorite one there. And I really loved the style of your build. And I feel like there's a distinct style there. And are you able to maybe just describe a little bit about the styles of builds that you do, where the inspiration comes from for your builds?
Like Sarah was saying, we're a team of 4 in this business, and we put our heads together, and style-wise, we pick what looks the best, essentially. There's not really much more to it. So you start off and you talk about stuff, and you like, right, what's the best here? And I think at one stage at the start, I put out on my Facebook a choice of 4 different kind of styles, 4 distinctive differences in tiny houses. And I just put it out to my friends, what's your preference? Have a vote. Basically, vast majority of people preferred the one that kind of looked more Scandinavian. So essentially the outside is probably simply put as Scandinavian inspired, the nice monument mat with the Western red cedar timber features, designing them, it's, the proportions, very fine. You got fine details in the proportions. So obviously, you do the best there, and trying to fine tune it a bit to be as pleasing to the eye as possible. Yeah, the interior, that's probably more my strong point, having that joinery background. I've spent a lot of my career designing the odd custom bit of furniture and whatever. So I'm used to putting a fair bit of thought into the proportions of things, and a lot of the little details that many maybe not think of, but make a fair difference just in the general appeal to look at, if that makes sense. The interior style, of course, you can see there's lashings of oiled timber. Yeah, natural timber, and the feature timber that we use, of course, is the cypress. It's a very feature-rich, beautiful timber. Where you have the light, you'll see parts of light grain and then a darker grain, and that's the difference between the heartwood and the sapwood. So the light part is the more exterior section of the tree, and so with the cypress, it has this really distinct variance. So you get that. It's a nice striking feature where you see that the 2 different shades of the timber, and then all the knots. Then the knots are nice and small. You don't want the knot that's too big and ghastly. We try and keep things simple. Our material choices, I'm very passionate about not using any chipboards anywhere and using solid timbers everywhere, and plywood. So we use premium plywood for the kitchens. We use all our lining board as solid pine of some description. We don't use any MDF. We don't use plywood for the lining board. It's all solid timber. And then all the feature timber is real proper, cypress. The kitchen is a high quality, like a premium plywood as well. So that's one of the things I'm passionate about is material choice. So there absolutely will never be any chipboard in any of our houses ever. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's what I was actually going to ask you about next, because I know that it's important for you guys to use those high quality materials and the solid timbers and all of that. And so you mentioned, so you're using that for the framing, and then cladding, you've got features of sometimes you're using the cedar and then the color bond and yeah, what other options are there for people that for those types of things, like the different building materials?
For us, those are sort of our signature features. We are working on some new designs that will have a different look. We've had times where we've swapped things out and tried different things, but everyone just keeps coming back to the favourites. So we haven't had a whole heap of motivation to really change that up too much. But yeah, Scott does have a new design which will have quite a different look coming up. And yeah, we kind of don't do a lot of customization, and one of the main reasons for that, we've definitely played around with it, but we've found that because it's such a tiny space, one little change can have 1,000 implications. And then our happiest customers have been the ones who have customized the least, which it might sound funny, because I know when, initially when we were doing tiny house, I'm like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to change that. But as I've kind of left things to Scott a lot with that, I've obviously mentioned some of the things that were important. We've incorporated all that, and we have different variations for each model that seek to cater to different, what we've found that our customers are looking for. And the goal is really to just take a lot of the hard work out of it for customers and to offer things that really work, that have kind of been tried and tested. And we do occasionally work with customers on smaller things that they're really keen to incorporate. But yeah, we don't change a lot once we've found something that works, unless we're just bringing something new in or a new variation with a particular function. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And I know what you mean, because like when you're talking about one small change can really have a knock-on effect on so many other things. Like, as I mentioned to you before, I'm going through my design process at the moment, and I can only see for the designer just how many moving parts there are and how many layers and how much work goes into kind of fitting it all together. So yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I know that you guys also have trailers for DIY tiny house builders. Do you want to let us know a little bit more about those?
Yeah, sure. So we offer a few different sort of fairly standard sizes of trailers that people can purchase if they do want to just start from scratch and build their own and just have a good foundation to build on. And yeah, so we have a fabrication team, and Scott's designed all the trailers, and they're working out really well. And they have a removable drawbar, things like that. We've tried to put a few features in that can, once you're parked up, because most people aren't moving their tiny house around regularly, you can make it really feel like a home and not look like a trailer. We love to offer that because we do know there's people who want to be involved in the process, and that's a really special thing for them to do, to make it their own, give it their own flavour, have their own creativity with it. So yeah, it's something we're passionate to offer people, just a high quality trailer that they can build up from there.
Yeah, you sort of mentioned the custom thing there. As you can probably get, unfortunately it's not really our thing to go full custom. And that's where we're happy to see, a broad spectrum of maybe smaller builders in particular out there who can take on those jobs. And really, if somebody has a particular idea, that might be more the option for them. And we recognize that as a good thing. And also, we want to be able to potentially offer trailers for people as well that might want to build their own, or we sell a lot of trailers to other builders, smaller builders, builders of similar size. Yeah, we don't want to sort of be like, oh, yep, we only have these designs and, shouldn't want to have anything else, It's just, for us, it's a business. It's the way we have to really work it. It's better for efficiency, and it's, ultimately the flow-on effect is that it's better for our customers who are happy with what we build, because we've nutted things out, we've worked them out, we've streamlined our processes more. So that's just, for us, that's the way it is. And but yeah, it's really nice to be able to offer those trailers for DIY builders or other builders to have tiny houses be built upon. And the beauty with our trailers are that they're flat, so there's no wheel well. Their chassis still nice and low because we were able to source a nice heavy duty load rated wheel it's got an overall small diameter. So it means that we can have our chassis at a good height, nice and low, without any need for wheel well that will intrude into your design or your floor area. So that gives our DIY builders and us as well great flexibility. We don't have to work around.
And you brought up a good point there too, Scott. Like, I think there's a spectrum of what people are looking for in when they're coming to a tiny house builder for, building their own tiny house. There are those people that do want to do so much customization and kind of just build it from scratch and have it as much as possible, have their own personal spin on it and features and stuff. But I also know there's a lot of people that are like not really that fussed on it. It's like if it's a really beautiful home and it feels right for them, they'd be happy to just go with one that you create as a base model. And I can think of actually quite a few people in my life that would be like that. Whereas for me, I kind of like the idea of being able to like customize, but there's something for everyone. There's and not everyone's going to want to wait a year or whatever it might be too. Like maybe someone wants to move next month or something, and so it's cool to have that option. And with the high quality beautiful builds that you have, I mean, you just have to go to any of those tiny homes expos and you'll see people say, I want that right now, like they'll buy there and then. So there's definitely a market and a scope for people that are wanting to do it that way. So yeah, that's really cool. And I love that you're doing the trailers for DIY builders too, because then you're also catering for, you're still able to offer a service for people that maybe want to still do it themselves, but are able to find a high quality foundation, which I think is really important for a tiny home, because just like anything, you want to have that strong, high quality foundation, because otherwise the rest of the home is not going to be as potentially as good as it could be if it doesn't start on a good foundation. So and I'm also curious, just with the homes that you build, so because I know that one of a common question is, especially if people are new to tiny houses, is, oh, how do I connect to mains power and water and sewage and all of that kind of thing? So with the tiny homes you build, what kind of connection points come with the tiny that people can connect to those things?
Yeah, so that's pretty simple. It's essentially plug and play. Legally, most of us know tiny houses are legally caravans, and they also our tiny houses have a caravan style 15 amp male connector. In that sense, it's plug and play. Whether your power source is via an extension lead, through someone's house, or a standalone off-grid system, it'll still be connected essentially via an extension lead, pretty much in most cases. So the power's plug and play. The sewage is pretty straightforward. You basically will pick what toilet you need or want, and if you're going to plumb that into sewage system, an existing infrastructure, then you find a local plumber to help you out, and for them that's just a bread and butter job. Most people probably do opt for the composting toilet like ourselves. You'll probably want to do it. Will be very helpful for you to do your own homework and get a bit of understanding on how it works and what's involved, because a lot of plumbers, actually, that's a bit different for them. For the probably majority of plumbers, they're not super familiar with it. So it'll definitely be good for you to have your own understanding, as well as you can appreciate more what's going on, and that'll help you to be able to problem solve if you have any issues down the line. It's the similar story with solar in particular. I'd even say more so with solar. It's really very beneficial to do your own research and educate yourself as much as you can on the system and the components, and figure out the numbers and how they work together and whatnot, because if you're going from on-grid to off-grid, you will have issues. You might have little issues, you might have major issues, you might have ongoing issues, like maybe your system's a bit too small, or maybe you've had a couple of months of cloud. Typically what happens if you come from off-grid to on-grid, you might sort of just take what you have on-grid for granted, potentially. So you might, for example, have your AC running, and you might have your washing machine going, and then you'll go and whack the kettle on so you can have a cup of tea. And next thing you know, your inverter trips or whatever, because your system really just can't handle all those things at once potentially. And many modest systems wouldn't be able to handle that sort of load at once. And so, yeah, it's just good that if you have that understanding, you'll probably then naturally look into all those individual appliances, and you'll be able to see from the ratings. They'll always tell you like what they use in terms of wattage. So you can help to put all those numbers together and be able to sort of make sense of it and have that understanding to the point of you'll have less issues, or you'll be able to problem solve better. But I'd say the main thing from that is that you'll actually be able to, if you do have that basic understanding, you'll be able to enjoy and appreciate your system a lot more, and you'll have a lot less frustrations as well. So that probably goes for if you do a composting system and also your off-grid system. Water, same thing. It's plug and play. You can have essentially a male hose connector, and then you want to use a caravan style water grade hose pipe. Otherwise you'll get a plumber. If you're off grid, for example, you'll have a rainwater tank, and then off the rainwater tank you'll have a 240 volt pressure pump. Preferably, you could use a 12 volt potentially, but if you want to have just fairly standard, you'll want a 240 volt in general to work well with your washing machine and dishwasher, for example, and shower pressures. So you'll have a pump, and then that'll just be connected to the house. So again, bread and butter job for a plumber. That's easy.
And yeah, you can just connect into any hose if you're just on mains water as well.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, you were talking about solar there and learning as much as you can, being familiar with how it works. And so if anyone wants to know a little bit more about off-grid solar systems, I did episode number 14 with Matt Porter from SAE Group in Northern New South Wales and Southeast Queensland. There's got a lot of good information in there. And I'm wondering, with the solar for you guys and the tiny homes do you typically put solar panels on people's roofs, or do you do solar trailers or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So basically, we avoid putting panels on the houses, and that's got a couple of reasons. Not to say you can't do it, but our biggest model, for example, the Grand, it's already on the limits of the 4.5 ton weight, so you don't want to go adding weight, especially up high. Basically, we recommend against it in general,
especially if you're wanting to relocate the tiny house at any point.
Yeah. Less weight you add there, because you'll have other things that you want to leave in there weight-wise. Not to say you can't do it. And the other thing there is we did actually supply solar trailers at one stage, but the big issue we were having was that when a customer would be 1,000 kilometers away with their solar trailer, and you might have that scenario of you've come off the grid onto solar, and then you've kind of done some of those things that I've kind of mentioned earlier. And then next thing you know, things trip out and you have issues, and it's just frustration for them. And then for us to try and find someone to go and fix it it can be extremely difficult, because it's a new location that you might not have a contact for, or you most likely won't have a contact for, who can just go out there and fix it ASAP. For that reason, really, we don't do solar trailers anymore, because by nature they are relatively unreliable, because there's so many different components, and there's so many opportunities for little things to cause the thing to shut down, the system to shut down, or cause issues. I use that word unreliable carefully, but I think it's just a bit of a reality, and it's kind of what we've found. And it's not really products that we're using, we're good quality ones in our trailers and stuff, but it takes the smallest little thing, which isn't a major problem, to cause a big issue for someone who doesn't know what to do.
Because most of us aren't electricians who are familiar with it all, a small thing can trip us up. And so we just found it can be a really helpful thing to source the solar system locally, so that you can get support when, there's a little issue that you don't know what to do with. And it's not like it's hard to get it back on. It's usually something simple. And like, we've had a great experience with our solar system. But again, you wouldn't want to have to wait months for that to be able to be sorted or resolved. So it just helps a lot if it's all local and can be accessed and serviced quickly and easily.
You mentioned before, Scott, so with the tiny homes, And, here in New South Wales, tiny homes on wheels are classed as caravans. I think they are in other states of Australia too, but there's slight differences within the state and then the councils too. I'm wondering, for your builds, are you building according to caravan codes or the building codes of Australia or any other codes, even though they're not directly specified for tiny homes on wheels? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. Short answer is it's built strictly to the caravan rules. I would like to add to that by saying that we offer stairs in our models, stairs to access your loft. I'm quite happy to say that our stairs, the rise and the going of the stairs meet the building code, the residential building code. So what that basically means is that each tread is less than 190 millimeters high, and each tread is over 240 millimeters deep. So what that essentially translates to is a very comfortable, safe set of stairs to climb up and down. All of our houses with stairs also have full stand-up height at the top in the loft. So for me, that's a big thing that I find very important, because especially coming down a set of stairs, if the rise is very big, it really is quite dangerous. And also another thing that I see personally as a bit of a potentially big issue is to have drawers and maybe even shelves on the face of the stairs as you're kind of going up them, because if you have a drawer that's maybe pulled out and it's someone pulls it out and you come down the stairs, you might put your foot in the drawer and then next thing you know, trip because you don't know what's going on and have a big accident. So that's something I feel strongly about. And then in terms of other sort of building codes, there's a few things that will translate across. The gas regulations are probably somewhat similar in how that needs to be.
You basically go off as much as you can of the Australian design rules and the building code of Australia.
Yeah, you have to make things work, and you'll take a few things when you can. A lot of the code there that's for the residential, it makes sense and it's there for a reason, So obviously we have to adjust things a little bit sometimes.
Even though these codes are not specifically directed towards tiny homes, I think if you're building them, it is a smart idea to go by those codes, as you say, for safety especially. Mm-hmm. And then if someone's maybe wanting to register as a caravan or they're wanting insurance or something, those types of things are going to be looked at for that purpose too. So I think that's awesome. And I'd love if you're able to share with us a bit more about the tiny house models that you build. So maybe the sizes and the base price ranges and anything else you want to share about them.
At the moment, we're offering 3 main models. One's a 5 metre, one's an 8 metre, and one's a 9 metre. The baby one, the 5 metre, is called the Gunya, and it comes in 2 different variations. It's generally used as just for guest accommodation. It doesn't really have the storage for long-term living, but it has a lovely big awning window and a breakfast bar and all the kinds of things you'd want for an overnight stay.
Or teenage kids.
But there's not enough storage for teenage kids stuff, I reckon, in that one.
Enough for a games console.
So you can opt in and out whether you have, you can actually sleep 4 in that one if you want to, or you can use the downstairs more as a lounge. That's a pretty popular build for anyone looking for an Airbnb or just to have family, things like that. Then we have the next one up is called the Sojourner, which was actually our flagship model, our very first design. And it's 8 metres long and it has 1 loft. And we have a variation that has a little half loft on the other end as well. It has 3 variations in all. So there's a fair bit of flexibility within those ones. One of the features that we include in both of our bigger model designs is a slide out feature, which we just love because it really opens up the space. And essentially, how you've probably seen in caravans, you often have those little push out or bump out sections that can just expand the space. So we've incorporated that into some of our designs, and we find it just really takes away from that corridor feeling that tiny houses can have, that because they're just naturally long and skinny and tall. And it just widens the space, especially they're usually opposite the entrance, and it just gives you further to look before you hit the wall. And it's a great space for a couch and things like that. The Sojourner incorporates the slide out in most cases. You can opt out of it. And yeah, you can have a stair option or a ladder option. So depending on how you prefer to get up to a loft and your mobility and different things like that. The Grand Sojourner is probably our most popular, actually, which is our biggest 9-meter model, and it comes in 3 variations as well. We live in one of those. The first variation that we did is the one we live in it's got a downstairs bedroom, which is often used for kids. So we've had a lot of customers with families who have used that one. But if you don't have kids and you want to just have a bigger space, we also provide the option that the downstairs enclosed bedroom is taken away in a few different configurations and just opens up and increases the living space. And it's incredibly spacious and still has the 2 lofts, can still sleep at least 4 people if you wanted to, even without the downstairs room. So all 3 are pretty popular for different demographics. Yeah, the biggest one's definitely the most popular. People seem to like that one. When we're adjusting from a traditional size house, it's probably slightly less of an adjustment, or depending on how many people you're wanting in there. We really love it.
Yeah, and the price ranges roughly?
It's about 95,000 for the Gunya, the little baby one, the 5-meter, and I think it's around 115, if I'm not wrong. Sorry, I should have double checked this.
That's okay.
For the Sojourner, it might be 125 or something like that for the Grand, for the base. And then you have options that you can add to those as well. So there's different appliances or, bar stools or bits and pieces that we can add if people want to, just to, that we know fit into the design and all built in. So something like that. So for a Grand Sojourner, for example, if you were to deck it out fully with all the extras that we offer, say a composting toilet and appliances and reverse cycle air conditioning and all of those bits and pieces, you'd be looking, and we offer installation and things like that as well. You'd probably be looking between 150 and 160,000.
Mm-hmm. And are people able to do financing with your tiny homes at all? You're working with any finance company?
So we have had customers who have done financing through Regional Australia Bank or their own bank or different options. I'm not sure at the moment. There's no one that we are specifically recommending because everybody's situation's a little bit different. But yes, we have had customers that have had finance bills.
Yeah, because I know that even though tiny houses are significantly less than, say, a traditional home or an apartment or something, that it is still a cost, and sometimes it can be helpful for someone to be able to pay it off over time.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And I think it's still an area that's sort of developing and a little bit outside of the box in Australia, which we've been working with a number of banks and lenders to try and make it easier for customers. And sometimes we have a bit of success, and sometimes just random things come up with crazy insurances. And so, we're still navigating a little bit through that one, but it's something that does seem to slowly be moving into the, getting easier for people because, banks even are actually recognizing that tiny houses are a viable living option now.
Exactly. And there is a tiny finance company called Great Escape Finance, and I actually did an episode number 18 with Paul.
Awesome.
So I'll put that in the show notes for anyone that wants to find out more about that. And do you guys deliver all around Australia?
Yep, we do. It obviously can get expensive if we're going to Perth, but we can physically deliver anywhere in Australia.
We're just in between trucks actually, but we will soon again have our 4-wheel drive heavy duty truck.
Our furthest tiny houses have gone to like South Australia and fairly far up in Queensland.
Tassie, got one in Tassie.
Oh, yeah, one in Tassie, that's right.
Oh, amazing. That's so good. It's reaching tiny houses all across the country. That's so good. And so if someone is wanting to work with you guys and go through the process of having you build their tiny house, what does that process look like? Like, do they come and visit your showroom? Do you do like a consultation with them if they're in another part of the country and can't really come there? Or what does that look like? Do they pay a deposit? Do you draw up plans together? That kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So we have a wonderful sales manager called Josh, and he's always answering the phone and answering emails and inquiries. One of the easiest first steps is just to jump on the website, and a lot of the questions are answered there, and you can have a bit of a fiddle and do like an instant quote depending on what kind of options you would like. So if you're just in that initial research stage, that's a great way to just get an idea of what you'd be looking at and what your options are, things like that. And then, if you want to continue with that process, you can just hit submit on your form, and that'll just come through to our office to Josh, and Josh will be able to see what you're looking for and contact you and just work through the process with you from there. If you do want to pop into the build queue, there's I think it's a $5,000 deposit that goes down just to secure your spot, and make sure that you can get it built in the time frame that you're looking for. Josh is great to work with, happy to answer any questions. We send through plans of the model and, note down anything that's being adjusted and all of those sorts of things and what different options you'd like to select.
Something that surprises me is that I'd say, 40%, 30% of our customers never have seen our product or met us.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's weird.
We do offer our workshop tours as well. So people are more than welcome to come and have a look at the workshop where we build. We usually have a few tiny houses on hand that are complete or almost complete for them to look through. We also have customers who rent out their tiny houses as Airbnb. So if people want to try before they buy in that sense, there's quite a few that we can recommend. But otherwise, a lot of times Josh is doing video calls and walking people through the different models and answering questions and showing them things on the phone, the camera, and things like that.
And do you guys have a waiting list at the moment?
Yep, we do. We build the gunyahs and sell them once they're complete, so they're more accessible in a short time frame. And then we have a wait list for a schedule for the bigger builds. At the moment, the rest of this year is booked out, but I think it's fairly early next year. Completion times are still available. And
now, are there any exciting projects coming up for you guys, for the rest of this year, or is there anything else that you'd like to share with everyone as we start to wrap up the conversation today?
Yes, there's lots of exciting things
ahead.
We've I don't know if we mentioned at the start, we've just we've just bought a property. So we now have a 40-acre property in Herons Creek, which is near Port Macquarie. And so that's eventually we're going to move our operation across to there, as well as, it'd be lovely we've got lots of dreams and hopes and plans for that. But one of them could actually be that we one day be able to have a tiny house village on there. So that'll be something that would be fantastic if we can do. So if you're council, if you're part of the council and you're listening, please let us do that. And got a new model that's in my head at this point, and it's going to be fairly different, fresh design. It will, I can probably tell you as much as this, that it's going to be based on an Irish, architecture sort of thing, sort of Irish inspired. So essentially what that'll be is, if you Google modern Irish house or whatever, even if it's traditional, you'll find that you'll have quite a simple pitched roof design with a slate roof and a white walls. So that'll probably be the inspiration for the next model that we'll try.
Lots of solid timber, of course.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, we'll try and offer something fresh and,
We do a few other little R&D projects on the side as well. So we did deck out a Häuslein camper van design that we tried out and recently sold, and got a few actual Häuslein caravan designs that he's going to be working on in the imminent future as well, just to cater for different usage of small spaces. So there's lots of bits and pieces that we're exploring.
Wow, that's so exciting. I love it. I can't wait to see what unfolds with all of that. And, the tiny village would be an amazing idea. And, especially how you said 40 acres, like there's so many different things you can do with that as well. And what do you happen to know, like what size your the new model that you're thinking about, the Irish design is going to be, or is that something still to be confirmed?
Probably be on the larger side. So I would say whether it ends up being a new line entirely, or whether it's just like a one-off model or an option, probably focus more towards full-time living for maybe retirees and more for residents, more for full-time living.
Just single story living, so
Maybe
just
more focused on the single story. Yeah, that's right.
I think you said you're looking at like an 8 meter design.
And probably 8, maybe 9 meters long if we can. The Irish inspired design will lend itself to the pitched roof throughout the length of the house. So that will be better for like a single story design.
So many good things. We'll have to watch this space. And where can people find and connect with you online? Where's the best place?
Probably the number one spot is just our website. We've got most of our information and galleries and options and all of those things on the website, which is www.häuslein, which is HAUSLEIN.com.au. And of course, you'll also find us on Facebook and Instagram and different things with just, if you look for Häuslein Tiny House Co, you'll find us.
Okay, and I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well. And if you want to find those show notes at home, you can go to tinyhouseconversations.com. Sarah and Scott, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved hearing your story and everything that you're doing with Häuslein. And I just love what you guys do. I love the builds. I love the story and the inspiration, and also just getting to know you guys a little bit more today has been really lovely. So thank you so much for your time and for what you do for the tiny house community.
Thanks so much, Lucy. We're really privileged to be part of the tiny house community, and it's really been really great to connect with you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lucy. Lovely to chat.
For sure. And if you're listening to us at home, make sure you go check out Häuslein and what Sarah, Scott, and their team are doing. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, as always, to be here with us. Make sure you stay tuned every Thursday for new Tiny House Conversations, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, you found it valuable, and you want to support the podcast, the best way you can do that is to share the love. That way I can keep bringing you more tiny house conversations to help you on your own tiny journey. So here are 3 ways that you can support the podcast. Number 1, if you have a friend or family member that you feel would benefit from hearing these conversations, feel free to share it with them, email them, text them, send them a telegram, do whatever you need to do to share it with them. Number 2, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll know exactly when the next episode is live. And number 3, if you head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. Thank you so much in advance. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next episode.